If you love photography, but you don't want to lug around a massive drone, this might be the drone for you. Let's just get the specs out of the way. Some key specs when it comes to photography specifically. I'll link down below my full 7 days review where I talk a bit more about video in general. But it's got a 1-inch CMOS sensor, larger surface area, better dynamic range, and better in low light than the Mini 4, Mini 3, Mini 4, Mini 2, etc. 48 megapixel stills, plenty of detail for large canvases and cropping. Even though it's actually only a 12 megapixel sensor, it does some digital wizardry to actually get that 50 megapixels. An f1.8 bright lens helps with depth and low light shooting. Dynamic range and raw capabilities, so it can obviously shoot 12-bit raw and also JPEG images, but I would obviously, of course, recommend that you film within that 12-bit raw format to give you the flexibility when editing highlights and shadows. Full-on autofocus and manual settings, so as you would kind of expect as a whole. Of course, some features that I've kind of started testing but won't be talking in depth in this video specifically, since it'll be more of a thirst thought as the drone is a photography camera. Obviously, we've got auto exposure balancing, where it will take a 0 or balanced exposure, followed by a +1 to get the shadows, and then a -1 to get the highlights. And then you can use software to combine those. Smart photo, panoramas, and of course, HDR. Vertical shooting, perfect for Instagram and mobile framing. Personally, this has been an absolute game changer and incredibly useful from a video point of view, but of course, as a content creator as well. That when I first got the drone, I hadn't actually had enough time to go into the settings and make sure I was recording in RAW. So I did have a couple of tests when it was only just JPEGs that were being captured as a whole. Of course, I would recommend, if possible, you can go through and change those settings to raw files, because it will give you that flexibility to be able to manipulate those images and be able to get a more HDR-like image if you choose to, or of course if your style is more contrast-based like mine is, then it will give you more latitude to play with as a whole. But even with the JPEGs that I had a couple of did a sunrise shoot a couple of days after getting the drone specifically, and I was pleasantly surprised with how much you can still manipulate the JPEG files. So it clearly is able to, and the sensor data and etc. is still really, really strong when it comes to actually being able to capture those images. And even if you do end up having it oopsie, I'd recommend, if you are watching this video, go double check your settings to make sure you are capturing in RAW. And for me, it was actually in a low stakes scenario because I was just getting used to the drone. So for me, for all of my corporate work, I'm now making sure I double check all settings beforehand. To be honest, from a dynamic range and a color point of view, it's kind of what you would expect, right? Like, I deliberately would shoot slightly flatter so I can manipulate it in post, and you have more dynamic range in post, or you can quote fake dynamic range. But especially in high contrast scenes, when you're looking at golden light or sunset, etc., it's really, really clean. And you would, from what I can see, even when you pull those shadows up, you don't get a huge amount of noise or etc. Like, there is some there, sure, but if you get it mostly right in camera and you're able to get maybe even negative, maybe a little bit lower in regards to exposure, or even perfect exposure, you'll have more than enough latitude to play with the picture and play with the image as a whole. Of course, you're on a drone, right? So you have those difference of perspective. You have that ability to do tilt downs, to see stuff from a different point of view, which I think, whether you're capturing videos or stills, that's probably going to be one of the main reasons. That's why I mainly got into the ecosystem and wanted to get the Mini 5, was the better quality of sensor, was that jump in obviously being able to leave the ground to be able to get different perspective shots, and etc. as well. And also from a business point of view, as a photographer and a videographer, for me, I have found that obviously, as I discussed in my pre-order video, but for me, I've already had the work, and I've already got the work that pays for the drone multiple times over, so I already know it's going to be a strong ROI in that respect. And as I build more marketing, as I do more, then it will allow me to be in a position where I can actually extract as much return on investment as I can as a whole. And of course, the YouTube content has already helped grow the channel as well. So in that respect as well. So it's mostly just a perspective thing. And I think it's really powerful to be in a position where you have those different perspectives as a whole to allow you to really change what you're doing and have, I guess in some ways, especially with the new rules coming in 2026. Let me know if you want me to do a video talking about those in a bit more depth. But it will also open up, obviously, different perspectives and share different perspectives in cityscapes as a whole. To be honest, I think the main, the main benefit is the same whether you're shooting video or photos. This drone is so small it can literally fit in my pocket. As those who've been following the channel, you would know, I was in Bath last week and I was creating some content in and around Bath as a whole. And I actually there was points where I was trying to carry too much stuff and I had too much kit on me, etc. And I was able to fold up the drone, put it in my jacket pocket, and I kind of forgot it was even there. So that's how small this drone is. You wouldn't be able to do that with the Air series. You wouldn't be able to do that with the Mavic Pro series. Now, of course, with those, you're going to get higher quality in regards to sensors and video and photography, etc. But you are going to come with a higher price tag. You are going to have to go through different permissions, and there is going to be more restrictions on where you can fly. So having a Mini which is completely capable and is able to get really printable image, if that's what you're looking for, or at minimum, just adding on some additional stills when it comes to maybe some work you're doing or etc. Like I've got a big Christmas project coming up, and I'm sure I'll do stills from drone as well, not just for client but also for my own socials as well. And quickly, fun fact while I'm speaking here as well, like you can actually vlog on this drone. Syncing audio is going to be the challenge, but you can actually vlog on the drone. The image looks that good, right? So for me, I jokingly did it because it's 1.8, so if you hold the drone close enough to you have an neutral density filter, etc., then you can still use it as a vlogging drone. I wouldn't necessarily say you should, but it's definitely something that you could consider and could do if you wanted to. So as I say, I think dynamic range is really good. Of course, it's not going to be up to a full frame level. If you want to, really pixel peep or fine tune what you're doing, then of course having a stronger or a larger drone with a larger sensor and more processing power is of course going to be beneficial. Or it's simple, getting to the really high end stuff when you're going to actually attach a full frame camera onto these drones, of course, in that respect. But for the money, for the size and the weight, you've got that different perspective. You have really, really usable, and in the winds and etc. Like I've got all my notes here about like strong winds, etc. Like fine detail. For me personally, every image I've taken has worked really, really well. I haven't had any issues, because I guess the question though is like, what are you flying in? If you're flying in like beyond tolerance, you shouldn't be surprised if the video or the stills that you're taking aren't ideally usable, because you shouldn't technically be flying in the first place. Look up what it's rated for, etc. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the Minis are rated for up to 26 miles an hour gusts. So if you're flying responsibly, which you should be, then you will be checking wind, and you'll only be flying in a way which is responsible as a whole. But for travel, quick shoots, it's incredibly capable than even I expected, to be honest with you, and it's made photography feel so effortless as a whole. So yeah, I would expect, and I would, to be honest, I was actually pleasantly surprised when I started editing the images, especially when it comes to dynamic range on edit, etc., like pulling up those shadows and then bringing down those highlights to get a HDR image when you're looking at sunrise, sunsets, those kind of high dynamic range scenes where there's really, really deep, dark shadows and really, really bright sunrises or color, etc., to create the most best video as a whole. Then yeah, I think I was really pleasantly surprised, especially when editing those JPEGs that I showed you a little bit earlier. But if you did enjoy this video and you'd like to see more content from the DJI Mini 5 Pro, we've got some more coming up very, very soon. In a couple of days, I should be going to film a pretty significant size house for a old friend and old client as well, so that should be pretty fun. So can't wait to share that hopefully next week. So if you did enjoy this video, why not leave it a like? If you're new, why not subscribe? And YouTube believes that you enjoy this video, so why not click it? And I'll see you very, very soon.